morning. Good morning for me, everybody. Hi. Great for everybody to gather together here today. Um, I can see about 30 people on screen, and we just checked in. I think there's probably at least 15 different countries and language represented. I'm assuming that's representative. So, isn't that great that we are having these conversations as part of an international community? Really amazing and a good thing too, because I think we live in times where if we don't build these conversational community minds that connect many different languages, many different truths, many different beings, we're not going to make it. I think it's really obvious about that. So the work that I've been doing over the past 40 years or so has really been going through some interesting changes, I think, with all of this. And now the work that I'm doing, I'm calling it creative mind work. It has its roots in my work in Ericksonian hypnosis, my early work in NLP, the work in generative change, but I think there are some different contexts that really can make a difference. So we created these courses to do. And so today is a promo. Some people say, don't use that term. But it basically is an invitation for you to get a taste of what this new work might be about and a sense of how it can make a difference in a lot of different areas, I hope. When I went to my undergraduate, University of California at Santa Cruz, one of my main mentors was Gregory Bateson. And Bateson is the guy that introduced us all to Milton Erickson. One of Bateson's most important books was called Mind and Nature, A Necessary Unity. And I think that title is probably more relevant than ever before. So I want to talk today about what it means to have a creative mind, what it means to have this sense of a spiritual self-awareness, if you will, that is threaded, that connects all aspects of life, not only in the present, not only in human beings, but with the trees, with the oceans, not only now, but with our history and our ancestors, not only the past and the present, but the future as well. And the really interesting thing is I think there's been this whole lineage and tradition of evolving a sense of what this mind might be and how we can nurture it and how we can use it, particularly in today's challenging times. So that's what I want to talk to you about. I'll talk for about 30 minutes, try to give you a little bit of an overview of what I mean by creative mind. And then we'll do a guided process to invite you to get a experiential sense about what that might mean, to be able to tap into this creative mind and to really see it's not just a passive thing where you go to feel good. It's a deep context that then really requires for it to be full, for you to step into the world and to make connection in the outside world with that state, and how in doing that it really deepens and realizes the state at an even more meaningful level. Those of you who know me know I always like to begin the day with a poem. The poem I want to share with you this morning is a little snippet out of what I consider to be, sorry Shakespeare, the greatest poem ever written in the English language, namely T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets. And I came across T.S. Eliot, I think I was 14 years old. and I was in high school, and a lot of stuff going on in the life of a 14-year-old, and I I read T.S. Eliot, and I was like, wow, something just opened up. That feeling when you connect with a great artist or writer, and you feel they know, and they've been connected to this for so much longer, and they haven't than I have, and they have this whole capacity to be able to express it. So my interest in poetry has really changed over the years. I tend to prefer more sort of Latin soul poets, or the Persian poets, or the Arabic poets. But Eliot, always has a deep place in my heart. He grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, which is right on the Mississippi River. Mississippi River was probably the most important waterway in the United States for its first couple hundred years. It's very wide. It's very brown, and you see that he uses this as a metaphor to to give his sense of what Bateson, I think, was trying to point to: mind and nature, a necessary unity. So this is in the third of the four quartets, which are the seasons of birthing and dying. Those are the quartets, and there's four seasons of that in the 40-page poem. So here he says, I do not know much about gods, but I think that the river is a strong brown god, sullen, untamed, and intractable, patient to some degree, at first recognized as a frontier, useful, untrustworthy as a conveyor of commerce, but then only a problem confronting the builder of bridges. The problem once solved, the brown god is almost forgotten by the dwellers in cities. Ever, however, implacable, keeping his seasons and rages, destroyer, reminder of what men choose to forget, unhonored, unpropitiated by worshippers of the machine, but waiting, watching, and waiting. His rhythm was present in the nursery bedroom, in the rank ailanthus of the April dooryard, in the smell of grapes at the autumn table, in the evening circle in the winter gaslight. The river is within us, and the sea is all about us. The river is within us, and the sea, it's all about us. So how about that as a first image of creative mind? So with that, I want to tell you a few stories to begin to flesh this out a little bit more. You see on that slide, that is the Grand Canyon there. And when my daughter, who's now 28, when she was about 10 years old, I went with my best friend and his family, and with my family, my ex and my daughter, on this rafting trip through those canyons there. There's like a 6-day trip. You don't see anybody else during that time. You're inside of these incredible canyons. It was really one of the trips of my lifetime. And each night we would have a camping place, and we would set up camp and then do a lot of stuff around the campfire at night. About the third day, we got into camp a little bit early, maybe 3:30, 4 in the afternoon. We set it up, and then one of the guides, there was 10 adults, 11 kids, and 5 these young guides. And one of them said, adults only, because the climb is a bit treacherous, but anybody who wants to go with me will climb all the way up to the top of the canyon, and I'll give you a geology lesson. And my friend Barry and I said, let's do it. We huffed and puffed, and we got up there, and it's just amazing. Just an amazing uh, experience to realize this is my mother here. This is what we belong to. And he said 1.5 billion years ago, the ocean was here in Colorado. The ocean was here in Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, that area. The ocean was here. It stayed a while, and then it left. And when it left, that's what you see is that first strata, that first level. 1.25 billion years ago, it decided to come back and visit again. Stayed a while, left. That's the second strata. 1 billion, third strata. 500 million, fourth strata. And he said with a twinkle in his eye, very, very recently, 250 million years ago, the ocean was here. And when it left, that's what we're standing on. Wow. That night we had dinner and we were around the campfire, and the guide set up this little sort of experiential history lesson of the history of the planet. Probably know the planet's been around for about 4 billion years. And they got a really, really long rope. And there was a tree on one side, and all the way on the other side of the campsite, there was another big tree. And there was, to say, like 11 kids. And they talked about the history of the planet. And so for 300 million years, there was only 300,000 years, there was just electrical storms. And so there could be no life. There was just a whole lot of shaking going on. And it had a kid, mark that place, 300,000 years, just storms. And then for 2 billion years, there was just ocean and these little slimy beings in the ocean for 2 billion years. Then the kid marks that spot. And then some of these beings said, hey, let's go up on the land, see what we can create there. So they threw themselves up, and I don't know how many million years that took. But from that, these very small celled creatures came up and began slowly to unfold biologic, and the trees and the mountains and the flowers and the birds and the bees and the mammals, so forth and so on. So it's really a beautiful thing just to see and hear this description of the journey that we have been on of consciousness on this planet for 4 billion years. Now, when did humans appear on this timeline? Well, the one tree is way over there. The other tree is right here. And they said about, all depends on where you mark modern humans, but anywhere from 50,000 years to 200,000 years in terms of the use of a human language as we would understand it, about 100,000 years. So another kid, is holding that place on the timeline, and you can't really even see any opening between where we are now and when it began. So we obviously have been here just a few moments. Just a few moments. And look at what has happened. It's who would have thought 200,000 years ago, oh yeah, I see, 200, in the next 200,000 years, cities will be created everywhere, beautiful art, cultures, people will gather, in groups of 1 billion people. They say that, like, what's that guy's name? Harari, the Israeli historian who wrote the book Sapiens, he said you can only get about 60 non-humans together in a group at a time. Otherwise, they just start getting incoherent. So in this short time, humans have created a miracle. You know, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of going all the different continents and all the different countries and all the great cities of the world. Oh my God, everyone is so beautiful. Every culture is so amazing. And you see the art and the music and the food. Like, wow, that's amazing. But wait, that's the good news. And the bad news, you see on the slide here, that's a painting by Alex Gray, who I think is one of our great artists, is that in that short period, we have brought the planet to the brink of extinction. It's no longer theoretical. And what we have seen just in the past year is that everything's falling apart. We may not be able to survive as an ecosystem. The virus, just one metaphor. We've had the Me Too movement. They're saying whatever systems we've created between men and women, they're completely unfair and oppressive. And women and all who support women are saying it's got to come down. Obviously, in the past weeks, we've had Black Lives Matter, and as another example of some of the horrors that the human mind has created. So we've got this really interesting paradox, that something about human beings can create heaven and can create hell equally. That's interesting. So what we're trying to do in Creative Mind is really look at what is it that is the miracle of human consciousness that has just took off and just been this incredible shift that the likes of which our region of the galaxy has never seen before. Self-awareness, I think, is the simple way to say it. That all living beings have awareness, and some living beings, like mammals, have a fair amount of intelligence. But it's only humans that have a self-awareness that allows us to unbind from time or space or connection or the planet. We can be able to disconnect from everything about our reality. Okay? The great news is that allows incredible creative freedom, because now I can say, well, here I am here. I wonder where I'd like to be in 2 months. And my consciousness, my self-awareness, my this sort of spiritual mind can be able to let go of today and be able to go into the future. So self-awareness brings this capacity to unbind consciousness from time and space or fixed perspective, and in doing that, things like genetic determinism. My dog is right here. You don't see her, but she's one of the great beings in my life. I love dogs. But look at the difference between dog intelligence and dog creativity and humans. When dogs, I hope I'm not being too coarse, how do dogs express sexuality? You got doggy style, and doggy style. But human beings, infinite possibilities. Yeah. How does a dog eat? Well, One of the great things about visiting all these different cultures is every culture has different ways of eating. You know, I usually spend 3 months in China every year, and I've gotten my hands slapped many a time for eating like an American in China. You know, in China, the food belongs to the community. And you only get one little bite, two maximum, in this little bowl. You know, so the way that we represent, the way that we experience, the way that we meet all of our different needs is totally an open variable, infinite possibilities. So the way that we think, I'll be safe, what does safety mean for me? Well, maybe safety and security, I get an image, if only I had enough money. And so I want safety. I've got my image to get safety. I just have to be really, really, really rich. And so now I just devote all of my resources and my energy to making money, making money, making money, making money. You know, if we went around in this, there's 800 of us in this talk here this morning. If we just took the time and asked each person to take 2 minutes and say, what does safety look like for you? We'd find infinite possibilities. So the freedom that comes with self-awareness also has a lot of possibility to really fuck up badly. That's technical talk. You know? And so that's what I want to talk about, is that what would be an intelligent use of this amazing gift, and how can we see when people are creating suffering or systemic violence or symptoms, how they're organizing their mind, and what would it be to shift the way that they're experiencing mind, so that the suffering can be able to transform into some sort of really creative thing. So this self-awareness now creates these two different levels of human consciousness. You know, we could call it the soul level, and we could talk about that not primarily individual. You know, there's a term that has been used for 5,000 years in different traditions called the anima mundi. It's in the Hindu tradition, it's people in the Greek philosopher tradition. It's used through Western philosophy. People like Yeats, the great Irish poet, mystic, talked about that all of the world is alive and interconnected. Anima mundi, the energy of a living world that is interconnected and indivisible. Nowadays, of course, that's gone out of fashion, and we're given this notion that mind is something here, and everything else in nature, everything else in the other it's not really a part of us. How's that going? So we have this first sense in the trance traditions, it's called the unconscious. When I talk about soul, I'm not talking, despite the fact that I was raised very Irish Catholic, I'm not talking about the Christian soul. I'm talking about the history of all of the lived consciousness so far. So everything that's unfolded, that includes physical, that includes the mammal intelligence, now includes what Teilhard de Chardin called the nous sphere, the sort of the sphere of the mind sphere of consciousness that is holding the whole planet at this point. All of that is there in a quantum pattern of indivisible unity. We're all in this together. So that's the unconscious. It can't separate out anything. It's all about these different contradictory elements: sadness, loss, birth, dying, me, you, violence, love, seasons, winter. It's all part of that single unity. And we know it locally from some core feeling that's here, that when we create the conditions, we can feel it. And it's not just a feeling, it's not just an individual emotion, it's our local representation of everything. Is that great or what? So the good news about that level of soul, of the field, is it's got connection to everything. Not so good news from a human point of view, it doesn't have self-awareness. So it doesn't really change very fast because it's just sort of bound together. So the seasons come and the seasons go. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. And so you have, for most of the history of consciousness, a very relatively slow glacial amount of actual systemic change. It's got to be part of the field. That's what, we say when we say it's genetic. But humans have awakened, again, this miracle of some self-awareness that we could call mind, you could call it spirit. Again, I wouldn't be using that in a religious sense, that is able to bear witness and to be able to create these representations of that sort of indivisible unity of life, and then be able to do that in maybe this way, maybe this way, maybe this way, or maybe I'll focus on this part, maybe I'll focus on that. So it allows just tremendous variability. So the nature then of this mind here is all crucial. Okay? So this brings us again to what we might call a crisis in consciousness. Many of you know the word crisis in Chinese has got those two characters, opportunity and danger. So we have the opportunity to be able to move things to a level that we couldn't even dream about. But there's also the danger that we will destroy everything through this gift of intentionality and self-awareness and the capacity to disconnect. Okay? I think that part of our struggle is this is so new, relatively. You look at that 4 billion years, and you look at the human awakening as just a little flicker in the timeline. We're kind of like a 2-year-old in terms of our developmental maturity with self-awareness. So a 2-year-old, barely talk, as some people describe about certain presidents of certain countries right now, it's all about me. It's me. So we're so new at this astonishing miracle that changes everything. We're not doing such a good job in a lot of places. We're not doing such a good job. And so we look at what is the nature of this mind that is being used so destructively. And so that's what it's very important to appreciate. There is no intrinsic structure of the mind. There is no fundamental properties of the mind. You can create a mind in an infinite number of different ways. You could have a mind that thinks, I'm here to dominate. Again, we heard a certain president talk about when a lot of people were saying, hear our voices. He said, the only way I can think about relating to that is to dominate everybody. That would be a way that you could organize your mind. You could organize your mind so that it's just located in me, in my individual self. You could organize your mind so it's just located in my family or my culture. So you can use the mind, you can create a mind that it has infinite different possibilities. There are traditions, right? And those traditions are sort of the default values in a given community. So we are dropped into a culture that has a certain tradition of implicitly creating mind and thinking about mind in a particular way. And then through that, we engage with the world, and through that, we create a reality. The most significant dimension, I believe, of a locked mind, of a destructive mind, is disconnection. So we've got this sense of we can unbind from the present moment. We can unbind from the body. We can unbind from this reality. And in that little gap, we're supposed to go back. We're supposed to say, I step away, I pause. It's like those of you who are parents, how many times you say to your kids, stop and think, step away, think about infinite possibilities. Maybe I could do it this, get your state and then step back into the world. A destructive mind, a mind that is defined by problems, by violence, by symptoms, by suffering, is a mind that is disconnected. Okay? So we have this unique capacity to disconnect, okay? And we're really exercising it quite a bit. Gregory Bateson, again, my teacher used to say in his Steps to an Ecology of Mind that the greatest error of Western thinking was this idea that one part of a system could and should dominate the whole of the system. One part. So what we're facing now is white Western men. They should basically be in charge of everything, and control everybody else in the community. We're getting feedback, I don't think so. But that sense that one part of the system should control. And then you start to have a mind that basically thinks in terms of, the way that I was taught is the mind is there to analyze and control. Another way of saying that, divide and conquer. Break everything into pieces and then dominate it and exploit it. So it led people like Margaret Thatcher, just to show you that it's not just the United States that has strange leaders. When Margaret Thatcher was prime minister, she said, there is no such thing as society. There is no such thing as culture. There's only individuals. There's only little pieces. Really? What kind of mind is producing that? And what kind of world does that mind create? A locked mind that is creating problems is using fixed images. In political movements, this is called fundamentalism and fascism. It means that I have a fixed single map of the truth, right? I happen to know it. And then I have to deal with the fact that almost everybody, the majority of people, don't share my map. So I believe the infidels should be destroyed so that the truth of this fixed map can be imposed upon the world. Good luck with that. So these locked minds are also what we call feedback insensitive. You know, the whole point of learning is that we open a conversation, we put things out, and we find out that the vast majority of everything that we do is wrong. It doesn't fit, it doesn't work, right? So we're getting feedback, you know, and the whole point of a conversational mind is you're just listening to the feedback and finding a groove so that something in that conversation between multiple members of a generative mind can begin to emerge, like a team, like a musician, like cooking a great meal. So this one-sided, fixed imaged, muscularly held mind is really a formula for violence. It doesn't feel that it belongs to nature. It feels all otherness as the enemy. It feels that the only thing I can do to be secure is to divide and try to get rid of everything that's different from me. It's not a happy camper. And what we're seeing is it's producing problems that have gotten to a point where the whole system is going to collapse if we continue in that way. This is the final thing I want to say in terms of those of us who work with, you know, as coaches or therapists. I would say that all chronic suffering, all repetitive problems represent a fixed brain, mind, body map. All are chronic problems that are persistent represent that there is a fixed unconscious brain, mind, body map. So as an example, we know in chronic pain that chronic pain is a very different beast than acute pain. You know, acute pain is sort of a bottom-up nerve-based experience. You know, I bump my shin on the bed and it inflames the nerve, says I'm out. You know, it's a way to give feedback. Watch out. You know, you may suffer really big harm if you don't pay attention. Chronic pain, 5 times more complex when you do the brain mapping. And it's not primarily responding to nerve pain. It's responding to cues out in the world that are indicating, here we go again. So these brain, mind, body maps are what are the primary source of creating depression, of creating insecurity, of creating pain, of creating violence. You've got these fixed maps, and they're not in any way feedback sensitive. They're not in connection. They're not in relationship. And so you have what Freud would call the repetition compulsion. You know, and those of us who work as coaches or therapists, we encounter this all the time. A person says, well, here's what I'd like to have happen in my life, but, you know, when I go to try to make that happen, the same old negative result occurs. Right? Fixed brain, mind, body maps, locked mind. So, you say I've been talking about some of these examples, and I think it's obvious right now that we are experiencing what Gene Gebser would call these large-scale eruptions, not ERRUPTIONS. These things that are just in the field, they're just sort of exploding. how many of you have have experienced in the last 3 months probably more crisis than you've ever experienced in your life? I mean, I'm amazed. It's like everything that could go wrong is going wrong. You know, every person that I know is just having one crisis after the next. I, any on an ordinary time, any one of these crises would be a lot. But I mean, I've got probably 6 or 7 major crises in my relational field. People I know, my work, et cetera, where things are falling apart. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? What Gebser would say, what the generative change work has always said, we go through these periods of basically stability where we can do business as usual, more or less. But it's just a matter of time before we come to these crisis points where business as usual cannot continue. And so all of our old maps, this is who I am, this is the way things work in the world, are ripped up and thrown away. And we don't know what to do. So we are dropped into sort of the ocean of the soul field. We are dropped into this ocean where there's so many different things and we can't organize it in any clear cognitive meaning. And in that time, you will either create symptoms or breakthrough solutions. You have a preference. You know, statistically, we know that when people come in with a medical symptom or a psychological symptom, and we ask them how many significant life changes have happened for you in the last 6 months, that the number of life changes, there's been divorce, there's been a marriage, there's been a birth, there's been a death, there's been a job change, there's been a retirement, the kids have left home, the usual suspects, that is predictive of the likelihood of symptoms, medical and or psychological. So it means the old maps are no longer relevant. We have to get down into the ocean again and create a new map that, in Milton Erickson's words, he used to say, in a trance, you can be able to let your unconscious, let that healing mind be able to create new meanings and new responses that best fit the needs and the understanding of your present self. So when I was 4, the way that I have my brain map, in order to be loved, I do this. I just give myself away to people. That's my winning formula for how to get love. But I work hard. And so now at, say, 40 years old, I'm in a place where I don't have to give myself away. And so these old maps of loving somebody means sacrificing myself, they no longer are available to you. And you feel this instability and you get pulled into this ocean. So the question is the ocean your friend? Is that ocean your family? Is that ocean carry everything that you need in order to be able to go through a death and a rebirth cycle? And how we answer that question really is one of the biggest differences in our life. If we feel that what's inside of me, what's inside everything in the psyche is my friend. I am a friend of the soul. In Gaelic and the Irish, that's called Anam Kira, a friend of the soul. So all this stuff we're seeing, the crisis in the environment, the crisis in gender relationships, the crisis in Black Lives Matter, these are all convergent because we're on this epic transformational passage. Is that great or what? Yeah. It's supposed to happen. This is a positive sign. Okay? But in order to be able to welcome that, we need something different from the locked mind. So this is what I mean by creative mind. This is what really trying to develop and articulate a set of practices, a set of patterns by which we can really move from this sort of mind that is connected to community. It's connected to male, female, black, white, human nature. It's connected to ancestors. It's connected to the future, the inner world of angels and spirits and dreams is connected to the outer world of specific reality sort of things. The creative mind is a centered connection of all these things. And I don't know if you can see that that image that I have there. That's another Alex Gray image of the entwined ropes. And I don't know if you can see that every knot on that rope has an eye that's opening. Very, very Alex Gray. So the sense of an interconnectedness where every knot, sort of like Indra's necklace, or Indra's pearls from the Hindu tradition, that every one of these knots has a self-aware being that allows it to feel everything is contained in me. Is that great or what? So this creative mind, whereas the blocked mind is based on disconnection, the creative mind is based on connection. So Gregory Bateson used to say, mind is relationship. Mind is the pattern that connects. The Chinese are much closer to this, at least in their traditions. I've been going to China for many, many years, and I started in Japan, and I would ask a Japanese person, what is this kanji? What does this character mean? And they would say, well, it depends. It depends on the context. I say, yeah. Everything's got, little secondary sort of things. But just tell me the basic meaning of this unit. They say, well, it depends. So I got married to a Chinese woman. She's still my dearest friend. And after about 10 years of asking her and saying, Grace, what are these characters? She said, I told you, it depends. That it has no meaning in and of itself. I thought after 15 years, oh, it depends. that the mind is not in a point. The mind is what connects the differences. So that is the creative mind. It's a chi flow that is threading and connecting. And you think, oh, that's so California. What do you think musicians pay attention to? What do you think dancers pay attention to? What do athletes who are playing on teams pay attention to? They're paying attention to the thread of connection that joins them as a community. We can do this with every part of our life, and we may need to do it if we're not going to get, bring extinction now. Okay? So this mind is, not only running through individuals, through relationships, it's not just running through humans. The virus and, the global warming is Mother Earth saying, hey, remember me, I'm your mother. It's like you're raping me, you're starving me, you're abusing me. If we don't reorganize our mind, the mind and nature, a necessary unity, we're fried. We're cooked. So we're thinking then of this mind as sort of this fluid, shimmering. Some people say, oh, that's so Californian. But it's not locked. It's sort of just think of your best states, what Csikszentmihalyi called the flow states. And what I mean by shimmering is that the image is not fixed and locked. It's like, well, right now it's this, and it's like, as I think about it a little bit more, the image changes to this. So everything is a variable, everything is in flow, everything is in resonance. From the resonance and from the connection, that begins to give you the unfolding of the mind rather than I have to figure it out here outside of everything else, and then I have to impose it on the mind. Okay? So this is called what Gene Gebser, who I was mentioning earlier, he calls this integral consciousness. And he calls this era that we are at the end of, we call it the perspectivist or the mental epoch, the mental phase, and where we had a fixed perspective and we thought in things in terms of the mind. Is that this new generation that we're being called into is integral. And his classic book, The Ever-Present Origin, talks about, sounds like Milton Erickson and Gregory Bateson and everybody I've ever been touched by. He talks about in this beautiful philosophical, poetic, spiritual way, is that this ever-present origin contains all perspectives. It contains no perspective. It contains each perspective. It contains all time. It contains no time. It contains each time. Is that great or what? And to me, that's always been the beautiful stuff about trance work and about generative change, is that you can step into this place where you're doing really serious work, but it's just this amazing river of consciousness that has got so many different possibilities and potentials. We may need to use that as our base or become extinguished. So that's what Gebser calls the integral mind. And I'm going to give you, you're going to have these slides available because I would talk, but I think it'd be good to go on to an experience instead. Talking about these different levels of creativity, from what Gebser called the ever-present origin, which is before time and space. It's always been there and it's never been there. And then you've got this pulse of life, sort of, I think the Tao sign, the yin and the yang, is a really beautiful sense of that. And then you've got all of the created experience of the world so far, including the present, but including the past that is enfolded in the present. And that's what we call the field of consciousness. And then you've got this self-awareness that's poking out and saying, how can we use this spirit to dip back into the field? And as we dip back into the field, be able to open it in this intentional, creative, amazing way. Is that great? Okay. So what I want to do is I think maybe just to get a little taste, I want to guide you through a kind of a two-part process. And then I'll briefly talk about the three courses, and I'd like to have like 10 minutes for any Q&A. There's usually, when we think about those who've been in the generative change work, we use the term coach, which sometimes I cringe now when I hear what people think about the coach state is, because it's sort of unavoidably, people think, well, that's just a totally positive place where I go to where everything is peace and love. If that was the case, it would be like a drug. If that's the primary way that we are thinking about this generative state, it can easily become a drug. And if we have enough money and if we live in the suburbs, maybe we can get away with doing that. Maybe not. So when we talk about the generative state, or this creative mind state, we're really talking about these two different principles. One is releasing all attachment, releasing rigid identification with the verbal mind, releasing rigid identification with the body and what the body is experiencing, releasing identification with our sense of our history, and just continuing to release so we can get to a place of something like something like the ever-present origin. And I know language is very, very awkward. And everybody sounds like they're from California. And I am from California. So we have to use it with a little sweetness and humor, but realize there's a place before you start to think. There's a place before you start to act. That's your home. And any time that we need to create something new, we first have to wash away the dust of all of our accumulated history. We first have to detach and feel that the detachment puts us in this source. That's not enough. The whole notion of creative mind is then how to use that connection to source and to yin yang and to the history of all life, to be able to use that, to be able to come into connection right now, in this time and this place with everything that we're doing in the world. And when you can do that, everything, every act that you take will have value to it. When you can do that, every experience that you have, you will be able to feel infinite possibilities. That's what Viktor Frankl talked about, that it's your connection to it. That's what you have the freedom. It's what Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, that in every moment, if you can hold it in this mindful state, infinite possibilities. It's what Milton Erickson talked about. Every great teacher that has ever touched me, this is at the heart of, I think, what I heard them talking about. So we then use that to open up to each relationship, open up to our connection to our body, open up to our connection to our friends and our family, open up to our connection to our enemies and our obstacles, open up to our connection to how we're holding a vision of our future. If we can make that journey in creative mind, miracles can open from that. All right, so the two parts, and I'm going to guide you through this. This will be about 15 minutes, and you can stand for this if you'd like. You can sit, but this is your process, obviously. Please know I'm not hypnotizing you. This is your experiment in consciousness. And what I'm suggesting, if you can practice something like this every day, the Dalai Lama says 5 hours a day for him, for this guy in his 80s. He said that's what I practice, so that everything that I do in the world can be able to come from that creative mind. So find a comfortable place, stand, sit. I'm going to guide you through this, with your eyes open or closed. Just let my voice sort of move through you like a river, and then feel your own way of bringing your own self-awareness to say, well, maybe I can let it move through my body like this, that's interesting. Okay. So part one, get into this state of a field openness. This is something that those of you who've been in my workshops have probably done. I had a more complicated one, but I thought we'd start with something that some of you know. Find a good posture where you can feel settling in, settling down. Say, wow, that's just a lot of words we've just been listening to. I take a few moments to come back home. And one of the things that's really helpful in terms of that reconnection is feeling the vertical axis, the heaven and the earth, as your first dimension of connection. I don't connect to other people. I feel through my body runs this amazing, luminous spirit of mine. And able to open to that, I relax, I release, I open. I feel my yin consciousness open to that feeling of that spirit that flows through everything. In the East Asian tradition, sometimes the feeling is, as I breathe up from the earth, up through the earth. Feel that spirit, liquid, light, subtle, electric, through my body, through the crown of my head, to the heaven, sun, moon, stars, saints, ancestors. And I feel like standing under a shower. I feel their enlightened presence flow through me. I'm home. I'm connected. I'm alive. And then one simple practice, this is actually comes from a Tibetan practice, is we think of our three minds, our verbal mind, our somatic body mind, our mind of all of our relationships in the world. When we say, what I want to do is drop this spirit of open presence and make each of those minds luminous and open, empty, present. So to do that, we start with the verbal mind. And the practice is, imagine holding between your thumb and your index finger a seed or a drop. As you take hold of that, attune your mind and your body with an interest to see, can you feel the vibration, the color, the energy of the seed? That's an attunement of your mind. I feel holding between my thumb and my index finger this luminous seed. My job is to sense inside of its physical form. It's not dead. It's a living, vibrating light. This is the seed of stillness, bring a sense of calmness and stillness into your somatic mind. So take that seed and with sort of the slowness of like a Tai Chi movement, the slow, sensual, that allows your movement to weave you into the connection with the sun and the moon and all of life. Bring the seed over the crown of your head. Feel your somatic mind and drop the seed, like dropping it into a pond. And feel it, watch it, sense it. Stillness. Stillness. I bring the intention. Stillness. I let my body receive and awaken to this higher level, luminous stillness. 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 And move through this pretty straightforwardly. Then feel my first challenge is to still the body. I can feel a place within where all states of my body, all emotion, all movement is being held from that place of stillness, still mindful awareness. That's interesting. Now let's think of the verbal mind. Feel it, sense it. Almost sense it in the third person. Oh, there's my verbal mind. Worrying, thinking, trying to understand, anxious. Right. Hi. Now let's take a second seed of silence. And you're not trying to make the verbal mind shut up. You're just seeing if you can drop a seed so there's just a silent, luminous presence, like a nest for your verbal mind. So live like a Tai Chi movement. The seed of silence, and drop it into your verbal mind. So you begin to awaken self-awareness. But before the words, there's the whole space for the mind to emerge from. Welcome. Every thought, every worry, welcome. Like holding it in a place of golden presence, silent, stillness. And then feel your third mind is the way that you think about the world around you, your friends, your family, your enemies, your life, your environment, your home. That's your outer field. Now we take a third seed, which is spacious. It used to be taught in Aikido when you walk into a room. Imagine your center dropping down into the earth and spreading out to create a space of welcoming for everything and everybody in that room. Spacious. You feel that third luminous seed. Spacious. So like dropping a pebble, you feel the ripple emanating outwards to the true nature of your mind, spacious, still, silent, luminous. This is the home for creative mind. And so each time you have a challenge, each time you're struggling, this is your base. Every day you train. But then you think, how can I use this base? And now we move into the second part, which is how to have a connection with everything in your world. I am that. This is the Erickson principle of acceptance and welcoming of everything you find in your world. So you might think first of, oh, wow, in this sort of silent, spacious spirit, you have a body. Isn't that amazing? That you've been given this human body. And just feel this sense of silent, still, spacious, present, that is able to welcome your body into your creative mind. And to say, as if it is your beloved, I see you. I see you. I see you, my dear body. You have so much tension sometimes, so much longing. Welcome. I feel you. Silent, still, spacious, luminosity. I feel you. I feel you. I'm with you. And just feel what it's like to sense your body is you, but at the same time, the body is not me. The body is me. Stillness. So any time that you find your body struggling or in pain or worrying, wouldn't it be nice to open creative mind? I say, welcome. You look like you need some TLC. Welcome. And feel from your place of luminosity that while the outer experience of your body may be fatigue or hatred or pain, the inner nature of your body is also still, silent, spirit. So feel underneath the pain or the fatigue. Wow, my body is a spiritual being. And use that connection to guide all your relationship with your body. And now let's imagine another being. Imagine somebody in your life, maybe that you're having a little struggle with. Your partner, child, a loved one, somebody at work. And so I'm really struggling with that person. First, I'll come back to my creative mind. Heaven, earth, stillness, silent, spacious. And only when you feel that awakened presence, sense this other person and feel, I'd really like to love, support, understand safely, connect. So grounded, open, and that sort of flower of light of your creative mind. Just sense this other person and welcome them into your creative mind. You don't have to merge with them. Feel proper distance. Feel the distance that allows you to be with you, and also to feel inside of them their struggle, what they're thinking about you, what they're not doing. But they have creative mind too. To feel their luminosity, their inner being. And just fully aware, I don't know exactly what to do, but I just want to welcome and give a space within my creative mind. I feel you to your partner. I feel you. I see you. I open. And you're just noticing the first sign that your state starts to lock or close. And you come back to stillness, silent, spacious. And sort of moving along, maybe a little faster than I'd actually do the actual process. But the next step would be feel a space that holds the two of you. I feel me. I feel you. I feel we. I feel we. I can only feel the authentic we when I sense you are you and I am I. And we are we. Just take a few moments. We're going to just bring a closure to that. It's just a taste. Just notice anything interesting in that experiment of creative mind that you feel opens a place where you can feel more freedom, less anxiety, less hatred, less disconnection. Anything that allows you to live from a place of awareness. I'm here. Awareness. I live in a world with so many deep, different beings, all playing the music together with a little bit of this and a little bit of that. This is my creative mind. This is the creative mind by which we make peace and make it through these difficult times and have a great, great time doing that. So sense anytime, each time, oh yeah, that's good, what I learned from that lesson. Maybe just a little taste. And give yourself a nice hug. This is more of how I want to live each day. You can do this. Bring mindful, creative connection to your mind. Open it to luminosity, still, silent, present. And realize that's great. That is really a great way to live. Okay, so that's a little experiential taste, as I say. And just a little sensitive to our time here. And want to say that what we do in the Creative Mind courses is we really talk about what it means to get out of this locked mind that is creating more of the same, and what it means to get into a creative mind. And everybody's got their own experience. It's like, how do you play music? You know, how do you sing? How do you love your children? So there's obviously no fixed way, but there's traditions that allow us to discover each day. Oh, this is what it's like for me, and to know this is what I need to commit to for me to then open up to the person I want to be in the world. So what the courses do, just briefly, and you can see all the advertising, is we take that creative mind in module 1, and we look at how this provides a way to have a generative movement through a creative path that what I call the 7 steps, and so that you open a space, you make sure that you're connected in this powerful way to resonant intention. You make sure that you sense and invite all the obstacles or your enemies that are blocking that, your fears. You include this sort of luminous holding of your resources. So that's a really interesting challenge, is to create a space where all these different parts of yourself that usually don't talk to each other are in the same space with the same resonance. And then once we do that, once we feel every one of them has positive value, our enemy, our obstacles, our intention, our resources, they all have positive values that can be experienced and represented in infinite numbers of ways. Then we see what will bring them together so that they can create something that's never existed before. And then to see, well, what I did here in the session is really important, but it changes nothing. Now the work begins about how to extend it into the world, how to make commitments, how to start acting, and then realize to do that sustainably, I need every day to be getting feedback, to practicing how to be able to stay in connection with creative mind in order to let that happen. So that's the sort of the base application of creative mind. And then the second is this notion that we start as an ocean where we feel connection to everything, but we have no self-awareness. And then to begin to awaken this self-awareness, most of the time we could contract into a separate sense of an individual self. And so you've got the good news and the bad news. The good news is I just awakened self-awareness. The bad news is the price of self-awareness was I had to isolate from everything else. So our relationship channels are our pathways to bring our individual self-awareness into the community mind, which is where all happiness is, where generativity is, where growth is. So we look at those 6 basic core relationship channels: your relationship with your body, your relationship to your historical sense, your inner child, your ancestors, your relationship to all of your friends and your resources, your relationship to your obstacles and your enemies, your relationship to what are your daily habits, because we all have daily habits. Some of them might be procrastination or anxiety. Some of them might be like my dear friend Robert Dilts, goes running for an hour and a half in the morning. What are the daily practices? Because these are the ways that we construct our day-to-day self. And then what is your relationship to your future? So we see that those are really difficult relationship pathways. And most of us, somewhere in the time, get wounded or disconnect. And so we've got these blocks that are keeping this sort of individual presence from flowing through our relationships into the generative world. So we look at what's your relationship to your body, where are the blocks, how do you heal those, how do you find in those wounds the resources that let you live free. Is that great or what? And then finally, in the module 3, we really look at most methods work up to a point. I think last time I looked in the American Psychological Association, there was over 550 recognized therapeutic methods. And when you do outcome research, guess which one is best? None of them. They all work better than nothing, but there's about 1/3 of the people that they don't help. So your method can work up to about 2/3 of the population. But there are people and there are places in each of our lives where the technique never works. I'll go to these workshops, okay, I'm going to totally heal myself. I go back home and those parts of me that have been wounded for a long time, they didn't really change at all. I just had a temporary sort of positive drug state. So what I think the creative mind work does, and this really, I get a lot from Erickson and some of his sort of more shamanic traditions, is how to go beneath the social verbal ego and feel these places that are wounded and see what it is to invite those into conversations. Because we know where the suffering is deepest, that's where the spirit is greatest. That's what suffering tells us, that something here is so deep and so beautiful, wants to wake up, wants to, but something has pressed on it. That's what suffering is. So the deeper the pain, the greater the spirit that's inside the pain. So we need to detect it, because most of the ego has been constructed to distract from it, and then be able to welcome it, and then be able to help take off those outer clothes that represents the violence that was done to it. So the light at the core of all your suffering can be able to join you into the world. Those are the 3 methods that we're exploring. I'm really excited about it. So I hope that you join us for that. Before we end, we're going to have time for just a few questions. I've got, I think, about 40 people that are on Zoom. I'm looking at like 15 of them on my screen. So those of you who are on the Zoom, I don't know if there's any questions that you want to ask as a way to begin to close things. So any of you want to ask, just go ahead and speak, or you can raise your hand. I can see like 15 of you. Go ahead, Maxine. You can introduce yourself.
First of all, thank you, Stephen. So much came up for me. I've learned so much from you before, now, and in the future, for which I am profoundly grateful. What I'm concerned about is the scale of this group that you will be teaching. How much will we be together, and how much will our numbers keep us apart from each other? There's so much that comes from intimacy in this work, at least for me, and personal things that came up just in the course of this last visualization were just dumbstruck. I'm dumbstruck. And I need to be able to have some space to work on that. Will that be present here?
Yeah, we're going to run these like we run the certification courses, which is we're going to have team leaders. So we'll have maybe 8 to 10 people in a team. Let's see, I can see Celine is there on the screen. I think she's going to be one of them. And so part of the module is that you'll be meeting in small groups. You'll be able to process things in small groups. We hope that you continue in these small virtual communities after the course. So I agree that there's a really important need for that. You know, I don't know about you all. I've thought this virtual stuff will not be able to provide that, but you know, I've been doing a lot of virtual stuff the last 3 months, and I'm pleasantly surprised that there's some really good possibilities. I mean, you were in the IAGC conference, but I did the Barcelona generative coaching, and I did this stuff in Russia. So yes, community is important. We're really designing the courses to have you have connection, not only in the group as a whole, but in your small groups.
Intimate groups.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for that. It wasn't made clear what the structure of this is, or even how many weeks it will be, how many sessions.
Well,
I know that.
Module 1 is 3 days. Module 2 is 3 days. Module 3 is 3 2-day weekends.
Okay.
So that one especially is I'm expecting that we'll have it there. It's sort of, to me, the virtual version of what I've done with supervision groups. And those supervision groups are, you know, communities that, 40 years later, my core supervision groups are still intimate communities. You know, because of the nature of the work, and we're no longer following a prescribed method, but what do we need to do with the support of the community to really connect to those places deep beneath your ego defenses, and to do it not in a way where we're interested in having you collapse into it or regress, but the whole point, I think, is how to be able to feel those and in a skillful, loving, kind way, invite them into the present self, which is where a person has all the resources. You know, the present community, all the hard work that they've done from the time where they had to abandon that part of themselves. You know, most people go on these extraordinary healing journeys. And I think it's only when they've developed the resources that these old wounds start to come back into play. But you need a really good community to support that. So, all right, anybody else?
And is that what your intention is for all of us? Can you briefly articulate the intention of this? What is this to accomplish for the average person joining this community?
Well, it's to realize that you're not average, and that you're on this great journey. And some of us, when we get to be our age, we realize it doesn't go on forever. So it's, the Buddhists like to say, when you get a human life, you have so lucky.
Yep.
Do you know how lucky you are that you've been given a human life, infinite possibilities? So we're saying, like, you're here. One of my teachers from the men's communities in the 80s was this West African man, Maladomo Somé. And, he would talk about how in his West African tradition, they believe that every baby came into the world from the spirit world. And they came from the spirit world because they came to this time and this place because they had a specific gift to give. And so they do this thing where the elders in the healing community, before the TV gets turned on, and before, all the stuff disconnects you from that luminous soul, they have a conversation with the baby, and the conversation is basically, why have you come? Why have you come? And they do the name for the child based on what the child tells them. So that's the point of the work, is to say that each of us is here because we have come to bring a gift to the world, and when we're not living that, it creates tremendous unhappiness for ourselves, and then that's what we pass on into the world. So that's a skill, and we need traditions to be able to do that on a practical daily basis. So that's what I'm intending with the work. Okay, anybody else?
Hi, Stephen. Thank you very much. It's beautiful process and very wise words as always.
Who's talking? I can't see you.
Comes from your way.
Oh.
Hi. My question is more about the relationship between this creative field and all of this beautiful mindful presence that we are cultivating and developing, and the reality. So if we are living in this challenging world, in order for us to make the difference, we still need to generate a level of those material resources to manifest those goals and projects and make the difference. So how this process is being used for shaping material structures?
Well, what, like in the module 1, where we're saying what are the 7 steps, it starts with what is your calling, what is your intention, what Viktor Frankl used to say. He said when he was in Auschwitz as a prisoner, to ask the question of intention of what do I want, he said it's not a very relevant question if you're a prisoner in Auschwitz, because nobody fucking cares. But so he would ask the question, what is life asking of me right now? So that's the first question. And what we're looking at in terms of this whole creative mind is, if we hold that with muscular tension, and if we hold that merely in our verbal mind, nothing will happen. So to hold that question, we have to open every cell of our being and open everything in our core to be able to feel it flowing through us. So partly we've been indoctrinated in all of our traditions. Our intention means contracted muscles. That if I want to do something, if I want to understand something, if I want to change something, I have to do this. I have to do some version of muscular tension. What we learn in all creative performance is you have to relax. The main primary language of creativity is not muscular. It's not muscularly created. It's nerve awareness. Something's flowing through you. So what we're doing is really seeing how to make sure that you don't walk at any point. And again, this is what you do if you're doing any creative performance. You're playing a musical instrument, your teacher will tell you how many times you have to relax. If you look at like Olympic athletes, before they're poised to begin, an ice skater or a swimmer or a gymnast, everything is, I have to relax. And the relaxation is not, a sack of potatoes, but it's a relaxation that attunes you to the luminous base of your creative mind, which is a thread of luminous connection that runs through everything, right? So then we see that as we do that, it's really in each of the modules, we see there's a lot of places where we've been conditioned to muscularly lock. If I tell you what I really want, I've got this learned belief that you won't give it to me, or you'll tell me that I'm too much. And so I've got this unconscious condition where every time that there's something I want to bring into the world, I'm unconsciously locking my, what the Chinese would call blocked chi. What we would call in generative change being in a crash state. So what we're learning is how the muscles have to support the spirit awakening, and then to see at any moment where your chi is blocked, at any moment where your breathing is inhibited, game's over. And you have to go through a lot of beliefs. I remember in Aikido, which I trained in for like 17 years. There was this young kid. His mother was an Aikido teacher, and so Joshua grew up in Aikido. It was like his first language. He was 17. He's big, young guy, but big, and like wrists like this. And we were doing this technique where you sort of you spin around, and each time I did it with him, I was like facing him, and I would unconsciously contract. And he would say, "No, no." He said, "Keep your center open to me. It's your only hope." And it went to this place. I mean, I grew up in a very violent alcoholic family. I thought, that is the fucking stupidest thing I ever heard in my life. I've got somebody who wants to destroy me, and you're telling me to open myself to them? And he said, "Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's Aikido." And he had this innocence and congruency that it was like, wow, it touched someplace deep inside, that we have to unfreeze ourselves. We have to come back fully into the world. And we have to do it in a way that sort of just appreciates our own way of doing it. Some days are better than others. We know from trauma research that you have to respect the body, to always be working on your edge, but not to be pushing it so far. But the point of it all is to open your being totally into the world. Then you have a chance. As long as you're closed, you have no chance. You're disconnected. You can't feel the thread, the spirit, the everything, your ancestors. You can't. And so you feel, there's just me out here. There's a big bad world that's going to hurt me if I come out. So we're saying, what does it mean to come fully out? And then to realize, when you open your being in a skillful way to your deepest fears, your deepest creativity and freedom is awakened. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, guys, it's as usual, my Irish ancestors have sort of been filling me with certain stories, so we're going over time. But I hope that gives you a sense of where the work is now. I feel really, really excited, and like all of us, the last months have been really intense. Really intense. I'm sitting here in my sitting room upstairs. The Pacific Ocean is right there. I was on the road 231 days last year. I have been home for about 100 days. I only leave I go out for walks with my daughter and my dog every morning. But otherwise, I go out one day a week at 7 a.m. They have seniors hour for food shopping. And I do my food shopping once a week and I come home. And so, you know, I'm sure all of you, it's like everything has been totally disrupted. You know, and then we have, you know, the virus and the, you know, before that, you know, the climate change and before that, the Me Too. It's really intense time. Now's the time. This is what we've been waiting for. And so we really need, I think, to step into and share with everybody and everything that we love in the world, that through open-hearted community connection, we can create a world to which everybody wants to belong. So that is, you know, what this tradition is about. It's so great to see so many different traditions that are stepping forward in this hour of our greatest need. You know, I'm really excited about the work. So I hope you can join us in further exploring them. So before we leave, I want to thank Richard and Oksana. Connor, are you guys on? Richard, Oksana? Well, they are everywhere.
Hello.
Hello, Steve. Hello, everybody.
Can we see you guys?
I think so.
I can't. Yeah. So everybody, this is Richard and Oksana. I'll let you guess who's Oksana and who's Richard. And
Stephen, thank you. That was just amazing, just wonderful.
Thank you very much for this wonderful evening. This is amazing experience, and I'm so grateful to all our team who made this happen.
Thanks to the whole team. Yes.
Yeah. Anybody in particular you want to?
Yes.
Yes. Z and Artyom and Nadia, Jonathan, Kasha.
And our beautiful Russian team of web design, the
best engineers in the world.
The Pro Studio group and Volodya, and also Sasha and Sofa, our designers, our sub-designers, and of course the great thank you to the great artist Antonio Meza, who created visual art for our website, and which is express Stephen's work.
The guy that did those paintings is Antonio Meza.
Amazing.
And yeah, that's just really remarkable.
And also big thank you for all our partners, affiliates who support.
I can't hear you now.
Uh-oh.
Can anybody else hear us? Let me try another, okay? So we want to thank all of our partners and affiliates around the world who are helping to bring Stephen's message to be accessible to everyone. We really think that what Stephen's doing is really, really needed right now, and we're proud to support him. Stephen.
Sorry,
It's okay.
my computer said there's been an audio problem, so I was going on the other computer. I think that's a good time just to say thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you guys for being with us, for living. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Good stuff.
Thank you.